Success podcast. I'm your host, Liz Hamlet, and I'm a success coach and business mentor. And I'm also founder of Spark Succeed Coaching and Consulting. So this is the podcast, How to Spark Success, where I have conversations with smart and savvy business owners, thought leaders, and people doing really interesting things all around the globe. So I've got a delightful guest for you today, all the way from the US. She is author of Meet 100 People, which encourages us all to meet new people and build lifelong relationships. She's also former MD of General Atlantic, and she's now investor and advisor to innovative growth companies. So I'd love to welcome Pat Hedley. How are you, Pat?
I am doing well. Thank you. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. I know we met before and we had a Zoom call before. You were telling me all about, the work that you do in investing and advising, but also, about why you started to think about writing your book. So do you want to tell us a bit about your career journey and where it's brought you to today?
Yes, I'm happy to do that. So my first job out of college was working for a consulting firm, even though I had studied computer science in college. I never ended up coding, but what it taught me, what studying computer science taught me, was how to solve problems and look at problems in a logical, organized way. So going into consulting made a lot of sense. After that, I had the opportunity to pursue my MBA. And while I was there, I decided to get some experience in finance. And I got a job for the summer between the 2 years, which is how it works. And at that time, I got a letter, an outreach from a firm I had not heard of, to come and talk to them. And since we did not have email or text to be able to cancel the interview, I showed up in person to do that. And the short story is they convinced me that I should add on another couple of weeks at the end of the summer and work for them. I worked part-time during my second year, and I ended up joining them and spent 30 years, nearly 30 years of my career with this firm. And there were two incredibly important lessons that I learned as part of that. One is that it really makes a difference to show up in person and to meet people in person. And while today that might be a little difficult in some locations, even a Zoom call or something where you can connect with someone and see them live makes a big difference. And the second important lesson, which I think is important for everyone, is that once you start engaging in a conversation, even though I said, no, I have a job, I'm already committed, sometimes that no can turn into a yes in a different form. So it is a no right now, but it may be a yes a little bit later. It is a no because I have an obligation, which I ended up fulfilling, but I can spend some time a little bit later. And it can turn into marvelous things. So I spent nearly 30 years at this firm. I was with a firm that made investments and helped companies grow. And that's really what motivated me, working with entrepreneurs. About 5 years ago, I left that firm with the goal of investing in and advising growth companies independently. And since then, I've made investments in over a dozen companies, more than half of them led by women, and I'm very proud of that. And companies that are really innovative in terms of how they approach old problems in new ways. About 3 years ago, I got to thinking that what really helped me succeed over the course of my career. And one of the things that I realized was that building relationships mattered tremendously. And I think it is with the lens of having had a long career and looking back on how many people joined me on my path early on and then rejoined me later on that fully became so important to me. So I ended up writing this book called Meet 100 People. And there were three things that motivated me. One is that it's advice I wish I had had when I was first starting out. I would have been more thoughtful and mindful and proactive about my network and building it. The second, it's advice I give to young professionals, young people, including my 3 adult children who are gainfully employed, I'm happy to say, in terms of building their careers and starting to think about that early on. And finally, it's advice I continue to follow today. And I think you have to follow it throughout your life. You have to really take charge and think about your network and the people you know as something that's incredibly valuable about you. Very similar to the educational background that you bring to bear, the expertise and the skills that you've learned over a course of time. The people that you know are similar and they're part of who you are. And I had to build a brand new network, even though I have a very strong and robust one from my career. I had to build a new one to do what I'm doing. And in fact, my career has expanded even in the process of having written the book and spreading the message that I'm spreading today.
Yeah.
So that's real quick on my career.
I love that. And, we talked about that, didn't we? About the real reason sort of behind the book being, you felt like a lot of people starting out, there's not really that sort of career guide or sort of hand-holding information that they need. And, we talk a lot with guests about, the benefit of having a broad network. And I love what you said exactly about, a no now is not necessarily a no later. There might be other opportunities. And the fact that those doors open to things that you hadn't expected is is really key. And that can happen through those networks and meeting new people that might not necessarily be what you think directly related to the career that you want to go into, but I think that's really important. And what sort of feedback have you had so far about the book?
I've had incredible feedback on the book, and what has surprised me most is that the feedback continues, even though the title, Meet 100 People, might be a little bit out of step with what we're all experiencing. In fact, we can't personally meet people today. That will change. I don't think that's permanent. I think human beings desire to spend time with one another, and business is improved by having in-person meetings as well as other meetings. The message still resonates, and there are workarounds. And the workarounds that I have found that have worked incredibly well for me and for others is being proactive and thoughtful about how you continue to communicate, not just with people that you know and that are a part of your network. So how do you maintain those relationships and have a virtual coffee or a virtual lunch, but even reaching out to new people that you might not know, either via email or text or through a LinkedIn contact, but then taking it to that next level, which is so important, which is having a Zoom or a video type of interaction. Because honestly, it's the next best thing. And I really do think that short of meeting somebody in person, having this conversation where we can see one another, see how we react, read emotions and gestures and things that human beings are very good at doing, but are lost when you're just writing an email, and can be a little bit lost when you're just listening to audio, but come to a little bit fuller recognition when you are having these video conferences. And frankly, I think this pandemic has accelerated something that I think is very important, and that is an embracing of video conferencing. It existed last year at this time, but nobody took it up in the same way, in part because they didn't have to. They were in offices. They could talk to one another. But what I worried about, and part of the reason I wrote the book, is that people were being a little bit less likely to get up and walk to the next office and have a personal interaction, because it was so very easy to be on Slack or to write a text or to write an email. And my message is, don't forget the human aspect of it. Don't forget that we need to interact and see one another. And frankly, if there are silver linings, and there always are to very difficult and tragic situations, I think a silver lining is that we're embracing this idea of getting together with one another by video.
Yeah, definitely. And, I know, we got together through LinkedIn and had a Zoom coffee, and, it's so powerful because, potentially if we'd have waited for an email or, a face-to-face meeting, we may never have met. And I extol the virtues of, I know if I get through LinkedIn a voice note or a personalized video, how much that sort of has a positive impact on, I always reply anyway, but how much more likely I am to want to engage with that person. And I think it's interesting, your book is sort of focused on young people, because I've actually been part in the last month of, there's a college student in the US called Caitlin, and she's been doing Meet 30 People, so 30 new people every day for a month. And, she said that was actually, for her, that was, even though she's sort of doing MBA and, quite confident in the business side, that's actually really daunting for students, for young people to reach out to these people in the business sphere. So what do you find people's sort of general reaction is, when you're advising to expand their network? Is it a sort of a bit daunting for them?
I do think it's daunting, and I have identified some of the things that hold people back. First of all, I give Caitlin a whole lot of credit. I love her 30-day challenge to meet 30 people in 30 days. I think that's terrific. And I would advise others to think about whether they can push themselves to do that. But I'll tell you what holds people back. First of all, some people think that you only need your network when you're looking for a job. And I think that that is a point at which it might be a little late to think about your network. You should be thinking about your network the whole time. And the more time and effort you put into your network, into relationships and meeting new people, the more opportunities will present themselves to you. So it is not just to get a job. That is a mistaken notion. Some young people think as soon as they start their job, they're done. They don't have to reach out to others. I completely disagree. That is when you have the best opportunity to not only meet your peers, meet your managers, meet others outside your firm in similar roles. Go back to the people who helped you along the way. Tell them what you're up to. Engage that network to help you in the new role. I mean, there's so much that you can do when you start your new job in terms of building your network that people, for many reasons, forget about. The other thing is people are held back because they're afraid. Young people in particular, and I hear this very often, I don't want to reach out because I don't want to bother someone. In fact, what they are saying is they are afraid to reach out because they're afraid of the potential reaction. They're afraid that someone will say no. And I say you have to get over that because you know what? Some people will say no, and that's okay. Try it anyway. They already say no if you never try. The answer is no without trying. So in order to turn that no to a yes, you have to be proactive and make the outreach. The other thing is that people have this mistaken assumption that if you approach someone more experienced, they're not going to want to engage with you because you have nothing to give them. And they forget that people who are more experienced do have an obligation to give back and to share because so many other people helped them get where they are. So rather than saying, no, I'm not going to help that young person, I think really many, many people say, you know what, of course I'll help that young person, especially if there is some common shared connection, and especially if the approach is done correctly. And we could talk a little bit about the approach because there's a whole lot to be said for that. When I reached out to you via LinkedIn, I did more than say, let's just connect. Yeah. I added a note which was somewhat personal. I heard one of your podcasts. I was impressed with it. I said that, and I said, I'd love to learn more. And that's a very different approach than saying, well, let's get connected. You know, that's just insufficient. You have to be more thoughtful. You have to do a little research. You have to give the person a reason to want to spend time with you. And frankly, people who are more experienced love spending time with younger people because younger people are the window into the future. And I love my millennial and younger professional friends. They call me their mentor, but frankly, they are teaching me an awful lot too. They are showing me how they view the world. And that's valuable because it gives me an idea of what else is going to happen. Actually, it gives me an idea of where to invest because the world is changing and there are lots of opportunities that I may not see as well as somebody who's looking at the world in a different way.
Absolutely. And, you know, we're both mentors and, you know, we work with people who are starting up businesses and sort of growing. But, you know, that importance of looking for mentor figures within your life. And actually, I read an interesting piece of research that said, obviously, looking for those more senior mentors is really key. But actually, some really great mentors and people that will have most impact on you sort of in the early stages of your career are people that are 18 months ahead of you, who are sort of still within that journey, you know, and working out, you know, what works for them, but actually are able to say, actually, when I was where you are, this is what I tried and this worked, this didn't work. So, you know, not dismissing people that are sort of nearer to your own age or nearer to your, you know, the start of their career journey. So I think that's really key. And, you know, you obviously must talk about that in your Meet 100 People book about the importance of mentors and sort of people of influence within your career.
You know what, you're so very right. I do think sometimes people forget that their peers, or those who are just a little bit ahead on the path of life or on the path of their careers, have a tremendous amount to offer those who are just starting out. And I will tell you, one of the most important things that I did early in my career was I joined a group of other people who were young investors. I joined this group pretty early on. I don't know how I heard of them, and it was a once a month, every other month gathering of people who were in roles very similar to mine. It was a small group because there weren't many people in private equity at the time that I was in private equity, certainly in roles like mine. To this day, I keep in touch with two of those people. Well over 30 years later, I keep in touch with those people. In fact, one woman who I've kept in touch with over the course of many years, and I've followed her career and her family, and honestly, I consider her my friend now, not just a similar peer. We are looking at investment opportunities together. So you never know where those early relationships can lead. And one of the things I really advise young people to do, or at least to consider, is that, and this is hard sometimes, I certainly did not think of this myself. I never thought that the people that I was first with would later on in my life and their lives become very influential and people who could help me and I could help them. I didn't think that I would see them 30 years later, because when you're young, you don't think about that. You think about what's happening next weekend. You don't think that the relationships you're building today are relationships that can be incredibly influential in your life over the course of a longer time frame.
Well, I love that. So thinking about your career and your success to date, what would you say has been the biggest factor in you being successful?
I think that's such an excellent question, and I've actually given thought about that over time. I think a lot of success is driven by somebody's attitude, by how they approach both opportunities and difficulties. And I think there are a couple of things that have driven me, and I've actually given this a fair bit of thought. I think my curiosity drives a lot of my success. My curiosity has helped me overcome my introversion. And that's an unusual thing for somebody to say, somebody who's written a book called Meet 100 People. I'm actually more reserved by nature, but I'm intensely curious. And so the discomfort that I might feel in larger groups is taken away by the fact that I think, you know what, I'm going to meet somebody who's going to be able to share something with me that I will find fascinating. And that is the attitude with which I approach networking. Everyone has a treasure. Everyone has something to offer. And similarly, I've used that same kind of mindset in opportunities that were presented to me over the course of my career. I'm not afraid of taking on what I call blank sheet opportunities. So opportunities for which I'm not fully prepared, for which I actually really don't even know that much, and actually push me out of my comfort zone. And I'm not afraid of them because I am convinced that I don't need to be the most knowledgeable person, because I can find those people. I can find those people, I can learn from them, I can enlist them to help me, and I can take on those opportunities and do well in those opportunities because of that. So my message to anyone is, see what it is within you that drives you, and then leverage that and use that. And again, you don't have to be the most knowledgeable person, because if you have a spirit of curiosity and you're willing to learn, lots of doors open up.
Oh, I love that. Curiosity. Be curious, definitely.
Be curious. Ask good questions.
Yeah, I know. You're obviously asking good questions because you've met so many new people. So we know that one of your success habits is around networking and sort of expanding your network. But what would you say, other than that, is your success habits on a sort of daily or weekly basis?
There are a few success habits, and I have actually spent a fair bit of time recently in the last year reading about habits and how important habits are to whatever it is you do, and how if you get into good habits, they build upon themselves, and how bad habits can similarly cause difficulties over time. And so one of my success habits, and again, it's not a surprise to anyone who's listening, is driven by my curiosity. I read a lot. I spend a lot of time learning, and I read a variety of different things. I like to read about current events, so I read what's going on in the world. I love going on my phone and reading the newspaper and various feeds that I get. I love reading books, both fiction and nonfiction. When I talk to people, I ask them about what they read and what inspires them so I can add to it. And so I think that is a really important success habit. And when I have read about other successful people, it is a habit that's shared by others. If you continually invest in yourself by learning, by reading, by talking to other people and learning from them, I think it drives opportunities. And frankly, for me, it is almost like getting nourishment. It's like eating. I need to feed my brain, and I know that about myself. So I spend time doing that. I think another really important success habit is that we all have a machine. It's called our bodies, and if we don't take care of that machine, then we can't do what we want to do. So I really fundamentally think it's important to think about how you take care of the machine, both your body, the physical body, and your mind. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting exercise? I really have especially, now in these times when we cannot go out as much, I really think that exercise is really important. It helps give us balance. I think nutrition is incredibly important because what you put in your body is what's fueling your body. And I think ways to bring joy to your life is similarly important. And trying something new is one of the best things that you can do to push yourself out of your comfort zone and see what you enjoy. And so there are a couple of things that I've tried that are new in the last year. Actually, in the last 5 years, I took up painting. I do it for fun on my own time. I am not a painter, but I enjoy it. It gives me joy to look at a blank canvas and apply colors and images and see what develops. You have to find something. Cooking, sports, gardening, there are so many things that you can take up that give satisfaction, that's outside of your career, that just gives you like seeds of joy. And I think you have to be conscious about pursuing those.
Yeah, and I think those habits and sort of painting or yoga, running, walking, whatever that might be, that really help to take you out of your own head.
Yes.
Are really important, particularly now where we've perhaps not got so much separation between work and relaxation time. I think are so key. And I love painting. I did art up to sort of the end of school and A levels. I just love it. But it is about those activities that you can just lose yourself in. Especially if you're someone that's constantly thinking and maybe worrying, or I think that's really key. And I myself, I love a good podcast. I find it really relaxing to be learning stuff on podcasts about business, about coaching, about mindset. And I know that we've spoken before about the benefit of podcasts as well. That's why it's so delightful to be able to have my own podcast and speak to people like you and glean these amazing insights into success secrets. So that's fantastic. So if you could start all over again, what would you do differently?
If I could start all over again, honestly, there are many things that I do differently, especially knowing what I know now. I would probably be even more thoughtful about my relationships early on. I would think that what I'm building and meeting people and getting to know people is something that's going to be valuable much farther down the road. So I think that's probably the main takeaway of what I would do differently. It's how do you keep in touch with people that you might have lost touch with over time? I think some people worry about reaching out to someone they haven't talked to for a year or two because it's been that time. I would remove that fear. I would probably reach out to people more. I would probably spend more time in groups and after work in those, opportunities where people get together and relax, because that's when people develop relationships. That's when people can share. I love to paint. Oh my goodness, you like to paint too. Let's talk about that, because that's a shared interest and that brings us together. And it could be about any topic, but sometimes that doesn't come out in the workplace. I haven't revealed in many of my work conversations that I enjoy painting. And so therefore I cannot connect at a deeper level with somebody else who might share that too. And I think it is our job to try to find those wonderful parts of other people that you might not know. And I have a dear friend who I've known for over 20 years, and we walk regularly. We have children of similar ages that when they were young, that's when they brought us together. And I just discovered the other day that she loves crosswords. I had no idea. This is someone who's a dear friend of mine. And I happen to love crosswords too. And so we have another point of similarity that we just never talked about or realized. So many people have wonderful parts of their personality that you can discover. And I think I would have spent more time in doing that.
And I think, now one of my recent podcast guests, Shane Hatton, he's a leadership communication expert. We were talking around, how leadership has changed and how we view our leaders slightly differently currently, because, we're seeing them in their home environments, perhaps with, children in the background or, dogs jumping over them. And you see them more of it as, that more vulnerable side, and that more relatable side, and and perhaps having more things in common, realizing that they're not a CEO in their office, sat working and in meetings that you don't really see, that they are a person with stuff going on at home. So I think that thing about that relatable is particularly important now, when we're all working in similar environments, really. So I'm sure over your career you've received and heard some amazing advice, but what would you say has been the best piece of advice that you've received about sparking success?
I think, and I have received a lot of advice over the course of years, so picking out the best is probably a little bit challenging, but I think one really important piece of advice is to know what your goals are, and longer term goals, and then to work backward to achieve those goals. And so it's very similar to going on a trip. If you go on a trip, you might just get into your car and drive around, and you might see some wonderful things, but you don't necessarily know where you're going. And you might miss out on a tremendous amount by not knowing what's along the path. If in fact you decide that you're going to go on a trip and you have a destination, and you know what the mile markers are to get to that destination, I think the trip is a little bit different. Look, there is a lot to be said for serendipity, and I really believe in that. But I think you have to put yourself in places where serendipity can happen. And you need to find those places where it occurs most. So if you're off on some deserted road, you might be able to see some lovely scenes. But if you really want to find out more and know more, it's good to be in places where there might be some other people who can point out what's ahead. There might be people who can say, you know what, down the road, there's an amazing waterfall. Make sure you get to see that. So I think knowing where you're going, having an objective, and then working it backward and figuring out, what do I need to do each month, each week, each day to get there, and then making it your goal to achieve those things, I think that is incredibly solid advice. So figure out your path, get a map, your own map for yourself, so you know where you're going, and then make sure you meet people along the way who can help you. People who've already taken that trip, people who've been to that restaurant. This is all metaphorical. People who've, had those issues at work that you might be facing and can help you address them and can talk with you about them so that you can overcome whatever obstacles you face or find whatever opportunities you might be looking for.
And that takes me right back to my first podcast episode, where I had Louise Thompson on, and she's a director of communications, but she owns her own business as Vintage Homeware. And she was talking about that destination, that you know, your overall objective, that direction is her North Star. And you know, she knows that as long as she's got that North Star and works backwards from that, that she knows that she's sort of, everything that she does is leading towards that North Star. And exactly what you were saying, you know, I love that. And you know, also people pointing out along the route, don't forget about this, you know, the lovely waterfall or this nice restaurant. You know, that's things to sort of pin your sort of progress to. So well, I love that. So if people want to find out more, where's the best place for them to go to connect with you, find out about the book?
Sure. The best place to go to find out about the book is my website. It is www.meet100people.com. 100 is the number 100. There you will find some other media opportunities I've pursued. I've done a TEDx talk. You might want to listen to that. And then the book is available there as well. In the US, the book can be delivered via mail. Abroad, it can be found on Amazon, the Kindle version. So I would direct people to Amazon to find the Kindle version of the book anywhere outside of the United States. And then feel free, come visit me on my LinkedIn. If you'd like to message me, feel free to do so. But do tell me a little bit about yourself and why you're reaching out, because that's usually helpful.
Yes, and if you like crosswords, don't forget to share that with Pat.
Yes, very much.
And check out her book, so Meet 100 People on Amazon. So, oh Pat, it's been a delight to hear some of your like success secrets and share them with our listeners. So thank you so much for joining me in your early morning over in the US.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll share some paintings.
Sounds good.
Amazing. And for my listeners here today, join me for the next episode where I've got another fantastic guest. Her name is Shim Ravalia. She's from the Gut Intuition and she's a self-care coach. She's a speaker and mentor. And she helps highly driven women in business go from stress to success with their health. So there's going to be some great tips for a lot of us there, definitely. And if you've been inspired by hearing about Pat's story or the other podcast guests, and you'd like to spark your own success, then get in touch with me and book a call. The website is sparksucceed.co.uk, and I'll make sure all the links, all Pat's links and you know, Amazon book link are included in the show notes. So once again, Pat, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so very much. It was my pleasure.
And have a great day.
You too.
Take care. Bye.